Welcome to the Witness and Persecution Podcast with Nik and Ruth Ripken. I'm your host, Anthony Ball. We're so glad that you have joined us today. Before we get started, I want to give a little bit of information about an exciting event coming in August. This coming August, on August 28th, it's a Friday night at 6:30 p.m. in Arlington, Texas. Nik, I don't think you can believe it, but this coming August is the 10-year theatrical anniversary release of the Insanity of God film. And so we're going to be having a big celebration in Arlington, Texas at Fielder Church. And we want to invite you. If you're listening to this podcast, we want you to come and join us. It's a free celebration. And all you have to do is register. You can find that online at www.nikripken.com/10. That's the number 10. And you can sign up for this free event. Come celebrate with us. Nik and Ruth are going to be there. Todd Smith of Selah will be leading us in worship and a mini concert from the film. We're going to have a full screening of the film, and we're even going to have a Q&A time with both Nik and Ruth, with Todd, and with several of the production crew that worked on the film. They'll be there with us in Arlington in August. So we want you to come and enjoy a special celebration of the 10-year anniversary of the Insanity of God film. Now, Nik, thanks for joining us in your home, and I think as people are watching this, they're going to wonder, why do you have your arm in a sling? And what's wrong with you this time? So can you give us a little bit of a update on life and health and where you are right now?
Well, I was teaching my wife some of my wrestling moves, and she pinned me. No, honestly, in the last year, I've had two major shoulder surgeries on the left shoulder, and I managed to tear both of those after surgery, worse than ever. So they put me in a new shoulder. It'll be a month ago this Thursday.
Wow.
A new shoulder in. It's amazing how they do that. And they do these things, Anthony, called a reverse shoulder, and they make the ball of your humerus into a socket, and they make your shoulder socket into a ball, because what pulls those two together usually is your rotator cuff, and since mine was gone, they do something different. And so now I'm having to teach muscles to do something they never were intended to do, but I'm doing really well. And I think a new shoulder over a repaired shoulder is going to be a lot more palatable in the future.
Wow. I didn't know that they could just reverse your body parts. So there you go, man.
Yeah. They cut me from the top of my shoulder to my underarm, put in about 20 metal, what do they call them, staples.
Oh.
And they separate your shoulder. Those of you who have queasy stomachs, just tune out, and they spread your shoulder and your body apart enough to get a screwdriver in and a hammer in to put the new implements in. And it's really weird to watch it, animate it, but they wouldn't let me watch it in real time.
Well, I can imagine why. I don't know, if you get that video, send it to us. Maybe we can put it on.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding. We wouldn't do that.
And we've got. I'm in physical therapy or at doctors 2 times a week, and since God has given that to us as a mission field, it has been a rich one, a really rich one.
Wow.
To pray with them, talk with them, ask about their families. I can send them people and say they have no money. They'll say, just send them on. We'll take care of them. And so we have a medical network of spiritual conversations. And it's just, if that's where we're planted, it doesn't really replace where our hearts are overseas, but it does require us to be faithful.
Wow.
Where we are right now. So
that's amazing. And that's has nothing to do with what we're going to talk about today, but that's an incredible spiritual lesson. I mean, 'cause it's so easy for us to overlook the mundane, and I'm sure physical therapy is not painless, but just seeing every one of those little moments as an opportunity for you to share the gospel, to be incarnational, and you're doing what you were taught to do overseas, which is what we want to do.
We're doing marriage counseling with my physical therapist. We're having associate to one of our doctors over for a meal.
Wow.
We had serious conversations with surgeons about giving due attention to their marriage and their kids,
Mm.
and they've been good
Wow.
conversations, and they share with us, their wives and kids' names so that we can ask about them and pray for them. And it's not, we make witnessing, something that's artificial. When
Right.
witnessing is the care enough for people that you just want them to tell you their story, and it
Right.
and it just works.
Wow, that's incredible. And I think it's encouraging, I think, because not only just for you, seeing how God is using you and Aunt Ruth in that season, but I think there's going to be a lot of people listening today who are probably in similar seasons, declining health, or not able to be overseas like they'd like to be, not able to do the
Hmm.
ministry that they want to do or feel like they should. And it's just a profound realization that you can do all of this. It may not be what you thought it would look like, but you could be so faithful to the kingdom of God in these
When I
little
was
things.
when I was thinking about this episode that we wanted to do, I was thinking, you know what I had thought in my heart to share with our audience today is that our medical and physical therapy teams that we have, and I've got places that work on brace for this leg that was harmed during a surgery, and
Mm.
but they're like a short-term mission field.
Huh.
I'm not with them long term. I don't often get into their homes. I don't live in their exact communities. But as we come and go in the midst, I would think we're having the same effect, except we do speak their language,
Right.
which is a big deal. But we are treating it as a short term. Well, I'm not doing that. We're not treating it as a short term mission field. We're treating it as a long term relationship. But since they're more like little meetings,
Mm.
and 30 minutes here, 45 minutes here, maybe a surgery, but it is making contacts that are turning out to be very beneficial for the medical community,
Mm.
and as well as for those that we might send them to for treatment.
Wow, that is brilliant. Well, that's a great segue. Then let me jump into it because we've had some listener questions that have come in that we want to take a look at and dive into. And Nick, that was a great segue because one of a big question that we have been asked, and we've covered short term mission trips in the past, more so talking about what it looks like to not be mission tourism and things like that. But a really great specific question that we want to address today is essentially what are some of the biggest questions that specifically Western mission teams, we're talking about short and midterm, not moving career overseas, but what are some of the biggest questions that Western mission teams need to ask or even need to wrestle with before they go? Um, you've already given us a great launching point, so let's jump into it.
Yeah, I think um, a lot of this, Anthony, is people thinking about what can they do,
Mm.
how can they help, and there's all kinds of volunteers that go out, and it might be those that are going out to hand out tracts or hand out Bibles or to be in listening groups, and then most of our
Mm.
volunteers have been medical people who come out and do a real service, and medical people are some of the best at what they do and worst in slowing down enough to have a conversation with people.
Mm.
And so I think for anybody that's coming out is they want to ask the question, you know, why is God sending me there that I need to learn?
Wow.
It's not primarily just it's going to be an equal measure, but it's going to end up being more about the person that goes. It's God's investment in me as I go on a short term trip. And what is He trying to teach
Mm.
me? And everybody's going to come back with some of the same thing. Oh, the poverty was so great, or we fell in love with those orphans at the orphanage, and we just hated to say goodbye to them.
Mm.
And there's going to be these emotional connections, but just turn it in to God's investment in the one who's going, And whether you go for 2 weeks or 20 years, that's what you're eventually going to take away is what God has done through you and what God has done to you.
Wow.
And so volunteers just need to know, and short-term people need to know that this is just, God may be taking them to Europe or to Asia or to Africa so that they can come back and be a better witness where they live, and
Wow.
also to encourage their churches. And later on, we'll want to talk more, but only 2% of most evangelical churches send career people.
Mm.
And,
Wow.
and, and I maybe later on we'll talk about the money that's spent to send volunteers, but we'll just talk about maybe later about how making that cost effective if
Right.
spiritually.
Sure.
Secondly, you have any comments on that? I mean, you've done a lot of this, but just on that one, is you just praying and asking God to open your heart, make you sensitive to see what you know. It's like God's going to give you the answer to questions that you did not know to ask.
Right. Absolutely. You know, and Nick, even as you're talking, because you know, my wife and I, we've been on a lot of short term over the decades, really, and I've told people a lot. If I had to do different aspects of ministry over again, that's one of the things that I would do differently, because I would never have thought about that question of how does God want me to be a better witness here in Texas. It's not about what I'm doing for 10 days over there, although that is important. I would have never thought to ask that question. And so it's something that I want to put in my repertoire and talking to people who are sending, who are going. Um, it is that question: how am I going to be better at witnessing where I am? And if God wants to send me to Africa for 10 days to come back and be a better witness in Texas, that's awesome. And I don't know if I've ever really heard people articulate that before.
Well, and also we often, take a person, but you want to do something life changing. Pray also at this initial stage. If you're going as a nurse or a doctor, but
Hmm.
but I know it's expensive, but try to raise enough money for you and your spouse, if you're married, and your children to go together,
Amen.
and let this be God's investment into you as a family, because one of the biggest frustrations is to come back and express why you have been changed so much.
Right. Right.
And you really need to smell it and taste it and touch it to do that.
Hmm.
And so I think a second thing would be, as I go, how can I do my work in such a way that I can serve the workers who are already there and the national believers that are there, extending and deepening the kingdom of God?
Hmm.
Again, it's not singing, uh, uh, looking in the mirror and singing how great thou art. That's an old thing about when I was back in college. It's sort of a joke that went around, but it is one of the things I'm
Hmm.
sort of tired of hearing, but I needed to hear it every time I heard it. It's not about me,
Hmm.
and it's not about you, but if you can, there's a lot of places we'll take families that we would never take their teenagers, or we would never take their children. But if they want to come as a family and they know the risk, it just hurries things along. If you want to grow a family that'll be life changers in their home church, or a family that might
Hmm.
want to come back and do more together or regularly, God can change a family,
Wow.
and renew marriages in a way that may never happen by
Hmm.
being observers in a pew in a church on Sunday morning.
That's right. That hurts, but it's right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I didn't aim to shoot knives, but I my boss, supervisor, told me one time he was talking about a guy that's a little rough in his conversation, going after maybe colleagues a little bit in intensive what we call recreational arguing.
Oh
I
no.
like that. I think it should be an Olympic sport.
Recreational arguing.
My wife hates it, but he said to this guy, he said, "You need to be like Nick a little bit, because he does it with a smile and sort of sticks a knife in a guy's ribs, trying to let some air out of the balloon. And the guy's walking down the street an hour later and says, 'Where did this knife come from?' You know, and just, you know, but the truth and grace is what we're talking about.
Right.
But again, going with the servant's heart,
Mm.
knowing that it's not me as much looking in a mirror as it is looking in the window, and looking at those workers that have hosted us, and looking at those nationals who make $1 a day or they may be better off, and just thinking, how can I help them carry their load and
Mm.
carry it better? And again, you've got your mind focused on things above, and those who are there day in and day out, and then knowing, how can I bless for this month or
Mm.
these 2 weeks or whatever the time might be.
Right. Right. Well, Nick, let me ask you this, because I know you've got a really good list that you want to. Uh, I'm assuming you have a list, but I want to maybe dive into that particular topic just a little bit, because, and if I'm going to get to something you are going to talk about, you need to stop me. But one of the things that I've noticed over many years is that workers on the ground are really hesitant to be really honest with short-term teams or mid-term teams or volunteers, and they want to play the host really well. They want to be hospitable, and a lot of times they can host teams that won't be particularly helpful, and they don't really know how to say that, and they don't know how to communicate to people coming, because they are making an investment in time to come join them for a short season. What is something maybe that you think workers on the ground, if they could be brutally honest with short-term teams, especially at this point that you just made about how can you deepen the kingdom of God for those workers and those locals, what's something that would just be brutally honest from workers on the ground that they would love for short-term teams and churches to know, that they don't necessarily feel like they can really say out loud, but it would be so helpful to them?
Hmm.
I might have opened too big of a can of worms, but
No, 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 you haven't. I do think teams that come out have an advantage that we never had. And I think workers on the field, even with nationals, can do a Zoom link or something with that volunteer team
mm,
and introduce themselves, and let the team introduce themselves and do some Q&A, and maybe do some orientation before they ever come to the field, so they, they'll recognize that face at the airport,
right.
and the worker can ask questions. And so I think uh, it behooves the field to invest that in
Mm,
those who are coming, and just help them again keep focused. We've got a church that is in that observes worship,
mm,
and we become so professional in our worship teams,
mm,
and our praise teams, and our people that preach in the pulpit. It's often estimated 60-80% of the guys don't even sing on Sunday morning.
mm.
And
Wow.
so, one thing great about these volunteers is that they're saying, we're no longer going to be just observers, we're going to be participants.
Right.
And you want to do everything that you can. If I'm coming to serve alongside you and your wife, I want to ask the question, how can we help you? What can we bring
Mm,
that will help you all? What spices, or what things that you and the kids can't get that would be a treat for you?
right.
And the more that they can serve you, the more fulfilled everybody will be.
Wow.
But I think just to set the tone before, and have as much communication as you can. And I'm afraid it really bothers Ruth and I to go and do weekends at church, and the mission pastor and whoever he can gather is there, and the worship pastor and the head pastor's never in attendance for the whole weekend.
Mm.
And so we know if we're going to help the church move along in its mission's identity, is we just say, listen, if your staff can't come, we're not who you need to invite.
Right. Right.
Because
That's
we're
good.
really going to invest in you, and you're going to bless us in ways we can't imagine. And so just
Mm.
you're looking from the beginning to deepen the, the mission trip before you go out, and then hoping to lengthen it by getting people who will bring further teams out with you or with someone else.
Mm.
And I mean, it's a very expensive endeavor for these plane tickets, and I don't know what the average cost of a team is. And sometimes I felt, well, just send the money. But but really, being in places now that we're looking at our generation that's retired or retiring or going on to be with Jesus, and we're seeing those who are in leadership that we mentored, and we're seeing those who they are mentoring, and still seeing their children, making all of this a multi-generational endeavor,
Mm.
as much as you can, is the best way to go to Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the ends of the earth to
Wow.
transfer people along their journey.
Wow. That's awesome.
And I think, in addition to that, that's just built into it, is if, as you have this conversation, even before they come out, what we're praying over you and what we'll pray with you.
Wow.
And as we debrief the times, the days that we have for together, we're going to pray that God will use this trip, that some of you will come full time.
Mm.
Maybe you'll come back for a month or two, or you'll give us your summers, a summer or two as a family. Maybe you'll do, as Baptists call it, a 2-year stint as a journeyman or a journey lady. Whether you, as a young couple, before you have kids, will come out and maybe map some unreached peoples for us.
Mm.
You're always number three for me, that I've just sort of noted in my mind, is will you be willing to
Mm.
pray after you get a taste of it, a sense of it? Is this something that God wants me to do full time? Maybe not here, but somewhere.
Right.
And use short term mission trips while you're in high school, while you're in college, as a young couple, to investigate what part of the world or of the Great Commission do you fit, that is a fit for you?
Right.
Because we know, as followers of Jesus, Jesus commands us to go. So
Mm.
we don't have to worry and lose our hair, you and I, over the fact whether or not we go. The only question we have to ask is, for this season, where do I go?
Mm.
Where do I go?
Right.
And it's going to be to family and across the street always.
Mm.
But you just want to stretch people enough that they can see people can pray over what they can see as possible,
Right.
and just you show them the possibilities, and they just want to be part of that story.
Mm.
They don't want to be left out of that story.
I love that. Let me ask this question then, because it makes me think of something that I thought a little bit pertaining to that. Do you think it's a good idea, or even part of a good strategy, to encourage lots of people in our churches to go short term? How I guess discriminating is not the right word, but I guess maybe how much of a firewall should there be of churches saying we want to send people short term to help workers on the ground? How narrow should that be? Should we encourage lots of people to do that for a week, 2 weeks, a month, things like that?
I don't. I wouldn't limit that. I don't know why it wouldn't be widespread.
Right.
Now, I have seen workers make the mistake of having teams come out one after the other, after the other, after the other.
Right.
And I've gone in pantries, I'm just being ugly, I've gone in pantry in mission homes. It looked like they had more in their pantry of the goods of America than any store in Africa had.
Wow.
Just what people brought out and for them,
Right.
and
All the
we
time.
we do appreciate things like that, but um, there are some workers that are just really good at using short-term people. But generally, those who are working among unreached peoples have to be a little bit more selective because
Right.
of the resistance, of the sometimes danger, and you can't come out. That was one thing when we went to unreached peoples that really kicked off probably back in the 80s, is that pastors and churches had a hard time when they went to Islam and to the dangerous places. They couldn't just hand out Bibles
Right.
or tracts or do street witnessing and
Hmm.
survive. And so we lost about 90% of our pastors for a while because they didn't feel like they had anything to do.
Wow.
But pastors are so uniquely gifted in counseling and in listening, and certainly as their church teams are going out and doing whatever there is to do. My goodness, the pastoral staff can bring healing to that
Mm.
mission family that is unusually deep, deeper than anything we can get except at a big meeting every 2 or 3 years.
Right. Wow.
And
Wow.
so again, pouring yourself into the workers, both in assisting them in their ministry, but also just listening to their hearts is a unusual gift that we seldom get on a mission field. And whether they're coming home on a furlough or you're coming to them, missionaries are good at hiding,
Mm.
and they don't know who to trust with the deeper things that have scarred them.
Mm. Right.
And so taking some wiser heads, and my goodness, I've watched sending out granddaddy and grandma and grandfather and grandmother,
Mm.
and taking that somebody can take those missionary kids on a side trip or love on them, so both mom and dad could go with the mission team.
Wow. I
And
love
just
that.
there's all kinds of creative things that you can do if you just say, "Here am I, Lord, send me and use me," and that I'm willing to serve
Mm.
more than I have to lead.
Right. And you're not just advocating for 22-year-old college students to come, you're advocating for cross generational involvement,
And,
stuff like
and,
this.
and again, what we often advocate for, and it's become so important among unreached peoples, they come to Jesus when they see somebody their age and their gender who's a follower of Jesus.
Mm.
And a lot of our mission teams are young, and they can be in a place for 10 years, honestly, and say they're in their 30s, and we go there and see the harvest of their presence, and nobody will be over 25 years of age that's baptized.
Mm.
And almost all of them are singles. And then we have grandmothers and grandfathers and older people come out, and they see your parents and your grandparents that are followers of Jesus, and all of a sudden people in the villages who are 50, 60, 70 years old say yes to Jesus and to
Wow.
baptism, because now they understand they are in that witnessing mirror,
Mm. Amen.
that Jesus is
Wow.
not just for young people. The danger of sending youth teams is that the local population says, well, that's the segment of the population that follows Jesus. And then when they get older, they grow out of it.
Wow. Wow.
Now, one thing good about young people going that is harder for folks our age and older, and that is, keep your money in your pocket.
Mm.
There's a lot of beggars on a lot of our streets in different cities, and most mega cities. And I've watched volunteers say, well, "You tell us," and when we do this, when we're introducing them to the work once they get there, and we talk how to handle the beggars on the street and not to give them money, and they'll look
Mm.
at us as if we're, All of a sudden we're not God's followers, but we're Satan's followers. And then they pull out money, and all of a sudden they've got 15 street boys climbing on
Yep.
them, trying to
Absolutely.
take their purses and their
Hmm.
billfolds. And one lady just ended up taking her purse and dumping it upside down and letting the money fall. And as the kids dived after it, she ran and escaped.
Oh no.
And she went from feeling brokenhearted for the street kids to pretty well detesting them.
Mm.
And so for your protection, but anyway, you'll find this pastor or this bivocational worker, who's really having a tough time making it,
Mm.
and you'll want to slip them $50 or $100. Just be really careful doing that. And I've watched people do it on short-term trips when they think the worker there's not watching. And you've got to do what God leads you to do, but just ask how you can do that better.
Mm.
I would rather go to a family and discover that only one child is allowed to go to school, and that's always going to be the oldest boy
Right.
because they don't have enough money. And then I have no problem committing once I can make sure, find out a way through the local people that will happen through that local worker. I have no problem paying for 2 or 3 kids tuition to high school and grade school and for books and pencils, and doing that for a long time, because you're not talking about $50 a kid for a year.
Mm.
And so
Wow.
there's really wise ways that you can use your funds that
Mm.
allows even the local workers to get into more homes.
Wow.
And ask, do you need wheelchairs? Do you need walking devices? Do you need crutches?
Mm.
And do you need vitamins? Every time I call, I found in the Somali years, I would call these drugstores, and they would give me foot lockers of vitamins. I mean, 5 and 6 of them. And
Wow.
then I would call the airlines and tell them what I was doing, and 100% of the time, they would ship them with me for free.
Wow.
And
Wow.
there are just ways that you can serve
Mm.
if you just become a learner. And I think that's what my wife would say, along with keeping your money in your pocket, is always be a learner. And again, we're going back to the first, is what is God wanting to teach me.
Mm. Right.
I don't know if you have a comment about any of that.
No, that was great. I've been taking notes because I'm gonna have to study on this after we get off.
You think of anything else? I would say, um, I had a group of about 30 missionaries from East Africa come to Ethiopia.
Mm.
We were working in Somalia, and that was a safe place to bring them. And they said, we're going to give you a few days to introduce us to how to reach Muslims and reach unreached peoples. And I thought, well, I can do that. But as I prayed over that, God said, no, do this. And in Addis Ababa, we had 3 Somali believers that had to leave Djibouti, leave Somalia,
Mm.
leave the Somali part of Ethiopia because of persecution, and they were temporarily in Addis Ababa.
Mm.
And so what I did is just darkened the little auditorium and had a spotlight on the stage. And for the next 6 hours, I interviewed those 3 believers, and they told their story on the stage. And it was like a PhD
Mm.
in what to do, what not to do, and just listening to their believer story. And at the end of that time, the leader of that group was a good friend of mine. He just said, and I was amused because he said, if what you're saying is true, as if it wouldn't be true,
Right.
but he was doing out of the best of motives. If what you're saying is true, what is it that we do?
Mm.
Where do we start? And one of the believers who he came out of a reading room that became known that it had Bibles in there, and a Muslim guy was waiting for this believer, And when he walked out of the reading room, he put a gun to his face. He wasn't 3 foot away,
Mm.
Anthony, and he pulled the trigger and
Wow.
it misfired. And he
Wow.
pulled the trigger and it misfired. And he pulled the trigger and it fired and it grazed the shoulder of that
Wow.
believer. And the Muslim guy looked at the gun and threw it down and ran away.
Mm.
And that guy came out. That was the guy that was on the stage there in Ethiopia for a time.
Unbelievable.
And he just looked at them and he said, listen, if you can come to be with us and encourage us, please come. If you can't come, then send somebody in your place to come be with us.
Mm.
And if you can't come and you can't right now send anybody, then write us a letter. Or now it'd be send us a text or an
Mm.
email or a Zoom call or whatever. And it hit me like a lightning bolt. He, in those 3 sentences, if you can come, come. If you can't come, send Timothy. If you
Mm-hmm.
can't send Timothy, then write us a letter. That guy, without knowing it, encapsulated the entire ministry of the Apostle Paul.
Wow. That's brilliant.
That was brilliant.
Wow.
And that's how great the Bible is that you can't do anything or meet anything as a short term or long term person that is not grounded in biblical experience that's already been written down
Mm.
for you to have it as part of your journey's equipment and part of for your own soul edification and just knowing that you can replicate the missionary journeys of Paul and Timothy and all of those early believers. And again, this has been, 20 years
Mm.
ago. But I think of it often. If you can come, please come, be with us. If you can't, send somebody to be with us in your name, in your stead. And if for a period of time you can't do either of that, write us and let us know how you are and encourage
Mm.
us. And that's the
Wow.
Pauline journey.
Right. It's like the Bible's still alive today.
Well, I think, again, trying to go on a mission trip and then coming back and starting to study the Bible, if that's what we've got, then that's what we get.
Right.
And that's okay. But it's a whole lot better to go out with the biblical stories so you can recognize those stories in the
Mm.
settings and the conversations that
Sure.
God places you in.
Right. Wow. Well, Nick, let me ask you this, because I think we've addressed in a past podcast about avoiding missionary tourism. Going somewhere for a week or 2 weeks or something, and just really making it more of a kind of a tourist trip, and with one day of holding orphanages and painting babies and stuff like that. So we've talked about that a little bit. What is one of the best ways that churches can prepare short-term teams to go? Because you mentioned a little while ago, you mentioned about doing some orientation, going through those questions that you've answered about thinking, what does God want to do with me and teach me? How does he want to use me when I get back? How can I serve? How can I extend and deepen the kingdom of God with locals and with the workers on the ground? So, what is maybe one or two really quick ways that churches can implement when they are sending short-term teams? What are some of the things that they can do stateside, to help them, so when they do land in the airport or whatever it looks like, they've got a good framework? And we know not everybody's going to be an expert, but they've got a good framework so that when they do land and they connect with those workers, there's just a couple of key elements. You've got to know this before you land in this host country overseas. What are some quick equipping things that churches, maybe even some non-negotiables, that short-term mission teams need to have squared away before they go somewhere?
Well, I think the best preparation is to do something cross culturally in your own community
Mm,
and to share meals with Muslims and Hindus
right.
in their homes. They're so gracious. You can get invitations, and staff people can have those relationships, and you don't have to tell a lot, but you just tell them you've got kids that haven't eaten Indian food or food from Jordan or wherever it is, and they're
Mm,
so gracious to host you. But if you can just get them to do some things cross culturally and share their stories a little bit when appropriate, and then come back to wherever you are and debrief that. But it's just hard. Uh, like for instance, we have to do some things that there's some African things that will get you ruin your ministry every time
mm,
because a young lady will stand up or a young man will stand up and talk about to an African church and say, it was really hard to say goodbye to my girlfriend and come out for a month or something, or it's really hard to say goodbye to my boyfriend. That means that you have a sexual partner.
mm.
The word
Yep.
boyfriend and girlfriend
Yeah.
in almost every rural culture that we've been to means that you're having sex outside of marriage.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's just such a common phrase for us. And like in Africa, one of the ways that people are cursed is they'll have an amulet in their pocket or maybe a weapon,
Mm,
and they'll have their left hand in their pocket, and then they'll reach out to touch you with the right hand. That's how you transfer curses. That's how you grab somebody closer to put a knife or something into them.
mm.
So everything you do with your hands, both hands in view, with your hands wide open, so they can see that you're not carrying an object or carrying a curse or doing something that might bewitch them or treat them. Every culture have these phrases and events that you just don't do. So
Mm.
either the worker's going to handle that in a debriefing when you get there, but it'd be so much more fun to do that before you, because we've got
Right.
these tools now that didn't really become really so easy to use until we were almost ready to leave the mission field 6 years ago.
Right.
You can just see how much this stuff has grown, and AI wasn't even introduced 6 years ago. Not to the general public. Now it's part of every conversation.
That's right. That's right.
And so you're going from an AI, internet, high speed environment to a pre-literate environment,
Mm.
or you're going to an environment where everything that they ever pick up in a book is truth, because why would someone spend so much money printing a book if it wasn't truth?
Wow.
And so I've had
Wow.
believers come to us in open countries with the wildest, wackiest Christian theology because they read it in a magazine or a book,
Hmm.
and therefore it's truth.
It makes so much sense.
And it's one of the
Wow.
reasons why, though we should be able to share the Bible stories without the book, in some of these cultures it's very important to tell the biblical stories and let them see that you're telling it from the book, because if you convince them that God wrote this book and he has endowed it with his blood and with
Mm.
his life, that it is truth, because God would not have gone to that much trouble to leave a book behind.
Mm.
And our
Wow.
libraries are so full, we would never imagine that a book in itself, just in its pages, would be treated as truth before it was even shared.
Wow. Wow. No, that's really helpful because um I think sometimes we can get so focused on the logistics of raising the money and getting there and what what is the schedule going to look like and what is the location, all that kind of stuff that we can often forget. You have the ability now to have weeks, if not months, of preparation in communication with the worker on the ground. And like you said, using Zoom, using email, learning cultural faux pas. Is it faux pas?
Hmm.
I'm from Oklahoma.
Yeah,
We don't use those words, so
it's all right.
I don't know if that's right.
You'll become literate sometime.
Well, we just discovered books a couple of years ago, so.
Yeah.
But it's just this idea of, like you mentioned, because I love the question that was sent in. Is in fact, the question was, what should they wrestle with? And I do think that's a great question to ask. Of how do you wrestle through some of these cultural issues that you don't understand, when you can have months of preparation through Zoom and phone and email with workers on the ground to help you eliminate some of those potential conflicts and troubles before you even get there. And so I think that's really helpful, just for churches to think through, as they're sending people, how can I prepare beforehand? And I can say this too, Nick. I'm sure that you would say this as well. We've encountered so many workers on the ground who have uh, really expressed, we don't want to have to do all of the logistics, and help us do the logistics, help us do the planning. Don't bring a group of people for a week or 2 weeks and expect the worker on the ground to do everything and plan everything. Like you mentioned a couple of questions ago, what can I do to serve, and what can I do to help those workers on the ground? But I've talked too much. What else do you have for us?
Well,
What
I'd say
wisdom?
in conjunction with that, they might want to send a missions pastor, or they might want to send one of their trusted leaders or
Mm,
couples over early, a few weeks, so that they can learn some of these things, and then they can be part of orientating their people when they get there,
right.
and walking them through a lot of these things. And but
Wow,
as they
that's
do
good
these
wisdom.
things, they'll get more gifted at it, and it probably out of every, I'm just guessing here, out of every 100 volunteers, we get one career person.
Wow.
But now I just thought of something I've never said before.
Uh-oh.
It might be really good to suggest to significant numbers of churches, given the statistics of men and women on the mission field who are single. As we said many times, we have 7 single women to every 1 single guy.
Mm,
And if we go to the hard places like Somalia, like the ones that we know of, we have 20 some single women to 1 guy.
right.
And so, why not do some wise things and try to get guys off the internet for a few weeks, if not longer, and just bring out male mission teams,
Mm,
young college men, high school men, and try to get them out, because they're so heavy ladies now and so little men. We just got to
mm,
get men off of pornography, frankly,
mm,
and off of the internet and off of thinking about the dating scene, and
mm,
just get men out and let them see what's real, what's life like, and let them get some calluses on their hands and their feet and their soul,
right.
and maybe they'll step back up.
Wow. I love that.
Yeah, I've not really verbalized that before,
It's a great
but
idea.
I'm going to toy with that a little bit,
I think it's a great idea.
or maybe even on the field, one worker takes all the ladies and one worker takes all the guys,
Mm,
and and ladies ladies don't mind doing the talking and the sharing, but men need to do something with their hands. They want to
right.
build something, dig something, and they want to sweat a little bit. But it doesn't mean that women don't want to do this. There can't be crossover. Just in that local location, though, I would think, can I bring some women out that just work with the women who are so misused? And can
Mm,
I bring out the men, young men, and just mentor them? And if you're going to Islam, you bring out single young girls on there. You better prepare them, because girls that are 14 and 13 in the rural places are going to be married.
mm,
And
that's
you
right.
bring out these 14, 16, 17-year-old girls, and they're going to get offers while they're there. And you need to be prepared for that,
That's right. That's
because
right.
there's ways of saying no, or her father's got to approve this. There's ways of getting out of that, and ways that would harm local relationships. So
Mm,
just do your homework, and don't be paralyzed by the possibility of mistakes. Just don't make the same mistake more than once.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm going to write that down because I do think that can be a significant obstacle. People just don't want to make mistakes, so they just don't ever go out. They don't sin. They don't come.
No, no. We often say, I've made these mistakes. Now go make your own. And you have to do that with honesty and humility, but you don't need to be making the same mistakes over and over and over again.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And Nick, I don't know if you had anything else on your list, but I wanted to follow up on a little bit of what you said because um, what we see kind of from the Western world looking out is that's a pretty significant focus. Is I do want to go work with my hands, right? And I think in Western culture specifically, we feel kind of useless if we're not building a house for a local, or we're not digging wells and painting rooms and all that kind of stuff. And we're not used to the sometimes it's okay to sit in the dirt for 3 hours and talk to somebody kind of culture. We just don't do that here. So how do we bridge that gap of, or maybe even balance that out a little bit of, we want to provide meaningful opportunities for people to serve locals and serve the workers on the ground, and also using people's gifts and talents, because that is, and that may not be a question we can answer in this episode, but I'd be curious to know how we strike that balance of, we're not just going to build a building that the locals can build, but we're going to do something meaningful, and also we want to use your gifts and talents.
If the church is going to continue until Jesus comes again in our culture, we've got to start reaching men.
Mm.
And uh, and we're fighting over whether who shall stand in the pulpit and preach, and I think often we're fighting over who shall be with the sheep rather than who shall be with lost people. And
Wow.
so what we're looking to do is taking our young men and young ladies and doing these types of things in our church mission field,
Mm.
in our church's backyard. And people are used to Christians being white collar people cleaned up in church. They're not used to us getting in the ditch with us.
Mm.
They're not used to us, like my brother does all the time, coming in and cleaning out their toilet and putting in a new toilet, or building a ramp. I don't know how many hundreds of ramps he's built for wheelchairs, which with these people handicapped couldn't get in and out of their own house, have to be carried.
Mm.
And so if you look at one of the most things that Baptists are doing now, their disaster relief teams are second to nothing
That's right.
that we do, and they are harvesting men by the scores, and they're doing some of the hardest, dirtiest, toughest work on this planet and
Mm.
feeding hundreds of thousands of people because men need to do something.
Mm.
And the only thing that they get usually is they get to serve Jesus. They're looking at, again, the pastor, preacher, teacher, music person, worship leader, youth worker. They need, the church needs to help them go out and build somebody a home,
Mm.
and do it in other cultures, or go out and even help the municipality do something, and and just get our hands dirty and get it dirty among lost people and let them show that, this is what Jesus did.
Right.
He always had his hands with the fish or down in the dirt and touching lepers and those who were blind, and the
Mm.
woman with the issue of blood. Jesus was always out there, with or without deodorant in a hot Middle Eastern sun,
That's
and
right.
just getting it done
Mm.
with the disciples and the women that followed him.
Wow. Wow.
It's just there's nothing that you and I can talk about that doesn't that's not already in the Bible. That when Jesus led all of those thousands of people that he had fed, and they all wanted to
Mm.
make him Messiah, and when he pointed them toward the cross, it said
Mm.
that thousands ceased to follow him.
Wow.
And so it takes a
Mm.
courageous man to put themselves on the crosses of this world.
That's right.
And it takes a courageous mother to send her son there.
Mm,
And so I hope anybody that listens to this doesn't hear Nick and Ruth saying we want one less lady to go.
right.
We're just begging that they can find, when they get to the mission field, they'll already find single men there not wanting to go on this journey by themselves.
That's right. That's
But
right.
that's not the picture right now.
Wow.
So anyway, volunteers have a huge a role to play, but it's more our investment in them than their investment on the mission field. And now that's not what I'm usually going to start with,
Right.
but that's the reality. And so it behooves those of us who are leaders and career people on the mission field. The best way we can build our teams is by having volunteer teams come out, identify those who have the ability, the proclivity to do this, and then as they go home, you write them, you're texting, you're emailing, and you're mentoring them and trying to get them back for further lengths of service.
Wow.
You got to fish to catch fish, and volunteers are a really good place to fish, and it's good investment in the local church, hoping to turn them on to the things of God.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Incredible. Well, Nick, thank you for your time and your wisdom. And it's been very helpful for me. I know it's going to be helpful for so many of our listeners because this is a topic that's not going to go away. Churches want to be involved. They want to send, and we want to celebrate that, right?
Yes, we do.
We want to affirm what churches want to do. We want you to send short-term teams. We want you to send volunteers to the places of the world, and we just want to help you do it wisely and help you do it effectively and efficiently. And so we want to thank you, Nick, for not only sharing your wisdom, but being able to draw on these many decades that you've experienced these on both ends of the spectrum and giving us a lot of wisdom for that. And so if you are a missions pastor or a mission leader or a church leader or a church member, and you want to know more about how you can help your church, or maybe you listen to this and you have a few more questions to say, how would I implement this in my context or for me personally or for our church, we would love for you to reach out to our ministry. We would love to answer questions that you have. You can send emails to question@nickripken.com, question@nickripken.com. And that goes to Nick and Ruth. They see the emails that come through. They would love to answer those, love to give you additional wisdom and thoughts about how you can most effectively and really most helpfully send short-term workers all over the world, because we know it is a blessing. And so we want to thank you for tuning in today. I want to remind you before we go, join us August 28th, 6:30 p.m. in Arlington, Texas for the 10th anniversary of the theatrical release of the Insanity of God film. And if you want more information about our ministry, you can go to www.nickripken.com, www.nickripken.com. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be with you next time.